Listen, I'm about to show you 5 SUVs that are so ridiculously indestructible they make cockroaches look fragile. We're talking about vehicles that laugh in the face of 300,000 miles, SUVs that treat rust like a fashion statement and still keep running, machines so tough that mechanics actually get bored working on them because there's nothing to fix. And here's the kicker, you can grab most of these for less than a used iPhone costs these days. So if you're tired of your car falling apart faster than your New Year's resolutions, stick around because these 5 beasts are about to change your life. Let's get into it.
Kicking off our list at number 5, we've got the Toyota RAV4. And before you roll your eyes thinking this is just another boring grocery getter, let me hit you with some truth bombs that'll make you see this thing in a completely different light. The RAV4 isn't just an SUV, it's basically Toyota's love letter to people who actually want to use their vehicle without crying at the repair shop every 3 months. Here's something wild. There are second-generation RAV4s from the early 2000s still cruising around with over 400,000 miles on the original engine. Yeah, you heard that right, 400,000 miles. That's like driving to the moon and still having enough left in the tank to hit up a drive-thru on the way back. And honestly, if you manage to kill a RAV4, Toyota should give you an award because you've basically achieved the impossible. I mean, these things are so reliable, there's probably a RAV4 somewhere that's outlived 3 different owners and is currently training the 4th one on how proper maintenance works. No, human, you change the oil here. Good job. Now go fetch me some premium gas. But let's talk about why this thing refuses to die. Toyota built the RAV4 on a philosophy that's almost annoyingly simple. Make it bulletproof. The engine options, whether you're looking at the legendary 2.5-liter 4-cylinder or the earlier 2.4-liter, are under-stressed workhorses that never really break a sweat. Toyota engineered these power plants with such massive tolerances that they basically laugh at regular wear and tear. The transmissions, especially the automatics from the mid-2000s onwards, are smooth as butter and built with the kind of redundancy that NASA would approve of. The suspension system is another masterclass in durability. McPherson struts up front, solid rear setup, and everything designed to take a beating on rough roads without turning your SUV into a rattling nightmare after 5 years. We're talking about a vehicle that can handle daily commutes, weekend camping trips, and the occasional "I probably shouldn't drive through this" moment without throwing a tantrum. Now here's where the RAV4 really shines in the cheap and reliable category. You can pick up a well-maintained 3rd or 4th generation RAV4 for anywhere between $5,000 and $12,000, depending on mileage and condition. That's used Camry money for an SUV that'll give you genuine versatility. You get decent ground clearance, available all-wheel drive that actually works when you need it, and cargo space that's shockingly practical for its size. The fuel economy is another reason this thing makes so much sense. Even the older models pull respectable numbers, somewhere in the mid-20s combined, and the newer ones with the updated 4-cylinder can crack 30 on the highway if you're not driving like you're late for everything. But hold on, because no vehicle is perfect and you need to know what to watch for. First up, if you're looking at RAV4s from around 2006 to 2012, pay close attention to excessive oil consumption. Some of these models had issues with piston rings that would cause them to burn through oil faster than a teenager burns through their phone battery. Check the oil level, look for blue smoke from the exhaust, and ask for maintenance records showing regular oil top-ups. If the seller looks nervous when you mention oil consumption, walk away. Second, inspect the suspension components thoroughly, especially on higher mileage examples. While the system is durable, bushings and control arm joints do wear out, and replacing them isn't cheap. Get under there, look for cracked rubber, listen for clunking noises over bumps, and test the steering for any looseness or wandering. Third, rust. If you're buying in the Salt Belt or anywhere near coastal areas, crawl under that RAV4 and inspect the frame, subframe, and rear suspension mounting points. Toyota had some rust issues on certain model years, particularly around the spare tire mount and rear hatch area. Surface rust is fine, but if you see structural rust eating through metal, that's a deal breaker no matter how good the price looks. But here's the beautiful part. If you find a RAV4 that passes these checks, you're basically buying yourself years of worry-free driving. These things are so ridiculously dependable that your biggest concern will probably be remembering where you parked it. The RAV4 earned its reputation not through flashy marketing or gimmicks, by simply refusing to break down when every other SUV in its class was nicely asking for premium repairs. And that, my friends, is exactly why it deserves a spot on this list. Moving up to number 4, we need to talk about a vehicle that's basically become the unofficial mascot of outdoorsy people who actually know what they're doing: the Subaru Forester. It isn't just an SUV, it's a cult. And I don't mean that in a weird way. I mean there are legitimately people out there who've owned 4 Foresters in a row and will fight you if you suggest buying anything else. And you know what? They might have a point. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Subaru has been perfecting the same basic formula since 1997, and they've gotten so good at it that finding a dead Forester is harder than finding a decent parking spot at Costco on a Saturday. We're talking about SUVs with 300,000 miles that still fire up in negative 20-degree weather like it's a sunny spring morning. The secret? Subaru engineered these things with one obsessive goal in mind: make it work no matter what Mother Nature throws at it. I'm pretty sure there's a Forester somewhere in Vermont that's been through 17 winters, survived 6 different college students, and is currently teaching a young moose how to properly use a crosswalk. That's the level of indestructible we're dealing with here. So what makes the Forester such an absolute tank? Let's start with the crown jewel, the Boxer engine. While everyone else is stacking cylinders on top of each other like a Jenga tower, Subaru went horizontal. The flat 4 design sits low in the chassis, giving you a center of gravity that makes the Forester handle like something half its size. But more importantly, this engine configuration is mechanically balanced in ways that reduce vibration and wear. Less vibration means less stress on components, which means parts last longer. It's engineering brilliance wrapped in sensible Japanese practicality. The symmetrical all-wheel drive system is another stroke of genius that sets the Forester apart from pretenders. This isn't some part-time system that only wakes up when you're already stuck. Power goes to all 4 wheels constantly, distributing torque exactly where it's needed before you even realize there's a problem. Rain, snow, gravel, mud, that weird icy slush that shouldn't exist but does every February? The Forester just shrugs and keeps moving. It's the automotive equivalent of that friend who never complains and just gets stuff done. Now let's talk money, because this is where the Forester really starts making sense for anyone hunting bargains. You can snag a 2nd or 3rd generation Forester, we're talking 2003 to 2013 models here, for somewhere between $4,000 and $10,000 depending on condition and location. That's genuinely affordable for an AWD SUV that won't strand you. The interior might not win design awards, it's basically functional furniture with a steering wheel attached, but everything works and it's built to withstand the kind of abuse that would make other interiors cry for mercy. Fuel economy is respectable too. You're looking at mid-20s combined, sometimes better if you're gentle with the throttle. Sure, it's not a hybrid, but for a true AWD system that's always active, those numbers are downright reasonable. Plus, the Forester sips regular unleaded, so you're not feeding it premium fuel like it's some sort of exotic pet. But we need to get real about the issues, because ignoring them would be doing you a serious disservice. Head gaskets. Those 2 words send shivers down the spine of every Subaru owner who's been through the ordeal. Models from the late 90s through the mid-2000s, particularly those with the 2.5-liter engine, are notorious for head gasket failures. You'll know it's coming when you see coolant disappearing without visible leaks, white residue around the engine block, or that dreaded milky oil cap. If you're buying a Forester in this age range, either confirm the head gaskets have already been replaced with updated parts, or budget about $1,500 to $2,000 to get it done right. Next up, check the CV boots and axles thoroughly. The Forester's AWD system works hard, and those constant velocity joints take a beating. Look for torn rubber boots leaking grease, listen for clicking sounds when turning, and test drive it through tight parking lot maneuvers. Replacing CV axles isn't catastrophically expensive, but you want to know about it before you buy. Oil leaks are another common theme, particularly from the valve covers and oil pan.
pop the hood and look around the engine bay with a flashlight. A little seepage on a high-mileage Subaru is almost expected, but if there's fresh oil dripping or pooling, that's negotiation leverage or a walkaway situation depending on severity. Here's the reality, though. Even with these known issues, the Forester remains one of the most dependable ways to get genuine all-wheel drive capability without selling a kidney. Find one that's had the head gaskets addressed, shows clean maintenance records, and doesn't have major leaks, and you've got yourself a winter warrior that'll outlast most modern SUVs twice its price. The Forester isn't flashy, it's not trying to impress anyone, and that's exactly why it works. It's honest, capable, and tough as nails when you need it most.
Sliding into the number 3 spot, we've got the Honda Pilot. And this is where things get really interesting, because we're talking about an SUV that can haul 8 people, tow your boat, and still refuse to die even after your teenager learns to drive in it. Think about that for a second. Your kid could curb every wheel, forget 3 oil changes, and use the parking brake maybe twice in their entire life, and this thing will still start every single morning without complaint. That's not just reliability, that's borderline supernatural. Want to know something absolutely ridiculous? There are first-generation Honda Pilots from 2003 still running around with over 350,000 miles, original transmission intact, hauling families to soccer practice like it's no big deal. We're talking about a 3-row SUV that's seen more school drop-offs than most teachers and still drives smoother than half the new cars on dealer lots today. Honda didn't just build the Pilot to last, they built it to embarrass everything else in the segment. Honestly, the Pilot is like that reliable friend who helps you move, never asks for gas money, and somehow still has energy left to grab pizza afterward. Except this friend weighs 2 tons and has a V6 that sounds way better than it has any right to. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of why the Pilot is such a beast. At the heart of this thing sits Honda's legendary J35 V6 engine, and calling this power plant reliable is like calling the ocean slightly damp. This 3.5-liter masterpiece produces around 250 to 280 horsepower, depending on the generation, but more importantly, it's built with Honda's obsessive attention to detail. The engine block is reinforced in all the right places, the valve train uses roller rockers for reduced friction, and the timing belt on earlier models is accessible enough that replacing it doesn't require sacrificing your firstborn to the mechanic gods. The transmission deserves its own spotlight, because Honda paired this engine with a 5-speed automatic that's smoother than a buttered ice rink. This isn't some flimsy gearbox that starts slipping after 80,000 miles. We're talking about a transmission that was over-engineered from day one, with robust clutch packs, excellent cooling, and shift logic that actually makes sense. The second and third generation models got even better, with 6-speed automatics that are somehow even more bulletproof. The chassis and suspension setup is where Honda really flexed their engineering muscles. Independent suspension all around means the Pilot rides like a much smaller vehicle while still offering genuine capability. The structure is rigid enough to handle towing up to 4,500 pounds without turning into a wobbling nightmare, and the available all-wheel drive system actually works when conditions get sketchy. It's not Subaru-level obsessive, but it gets the job done without drama. Now here's where the Pilot becomes an absolute steal for anyone shopping smart. First and second generation models, spanning from 2003 to 2015, can be found for anywhere between $6,000 and $15,000 depending on mileage, condition, and how desperate the seller is. For that money, you're getting legitimate 3-row seating that adults can actually use without needing a yoga certification, cargo space that swallows everything from Costco runs to camping gear, and build quality that makes modern crossovers feel like they're held together with hope and zip ties. The real-world fuel economy hovers around the low 20s combined, which honestly isn't bad for a vehicle this size with a proper V6 under the hood. Yeah, it's not winning any green awards, but you're also not stopping for gas every 100 miles like some larger SUVs demand. But let's pump the brakes and talk about what you absolutely need to inspect before handing over your cash. The biggest issue with first-generation Pilots, particularly the 2003 to 2008 models, is transmission failure. And I'm not talking about a little slipping here and there. I'm talking about catastrophic failure if the fluid wasn't maintained religiously.
During your test drive, pay attention to any hesitation between shifts, shuddering when accelerating, or delayed engagement when putting it in gear. Check the transmission fluid for burnt smell or dark color. If the owner can't produce transmission service records, consider that a massive red flag and either negotiate hard or walk away entirely. The variable cylinder management system on these V6 engines can cause problems too. It's designed to shut down cylinders for fuel economy, but when it starts acting up, you'll get misfires, rough idle, and check engine lights that make you question your life choices. Listen carefully at idle for any unusual vibrations or stumbling. A smooth, steady idle is what you want. Inspect the timing belt religiously if you're looking at models that still use one. Honda recommends replacement every 105,000 miles, and if there's no proof it was done, assume it wasn't. Budget about $1,000 to get it done right with the water pump, or use it as major negotiating leverage. Check for rust underneath, especially around the frame rails and rear subframe mounting points. The pilot's undercarriage can trap dirt and moisture, leading to corrosion over time in humid or salty environments. Surface rust is expected for older vehicles, but structural rust is a deal killer. Here's the bottom line. When you find a Honda Pilot that's been properly maintained, with service records to back it up and no major red flags, you're looking at one of the best value propositions in the used SUV market. This is a vehicle that delivers on every promise it makes. It hauls people, it carries stuff, it goes the distance without asking for much in return, and it does all of this with a level of refinement that makes you forget you paid used Accord money for it. The Pilot isn't just tough, it's smart tough, and that's exactly why it earned this spot on our list.
Now we're hitting number 2, and this is where we separate the pretenders from the legends. The Mitsubishi Montero is an SUV that most people have completely forgotten exists, and that's their loss, because this thing is an absolute off-road monster disguised as a family hauler. While everyone was busy buying Land Cruisers and paying premium prices, the Montero was sitting in the corner quietly building a reputation among people who actually use their SUVs for serious work. And here's the kicker, you can pick one up for a fraction of what those Land Cruiser snobs are paying. Let me paint you a picture. The Montero won the Dakar Rally, arguably the most brutal off-road race on planet Earth, a staggering 12 times. 12! That's not a typo. We're talking about an SUV that conquered deserts, mountains, and conditions that would make a Jeep Wrangler call for its mommy, and it did this while barely breaking a sweat. The same basic platform you can buy for $8,000 on Craigslist dominated professional racing for over a decade. If that doesn't scream bulletproof engineering, I don't know what does. The Montero is basically that quiet kid in school who never caused trouble, never showed off, and then casually won the science fair 12 years in a row while everyone else was still figuring out how baking soda volcanoes work. Respect where respect is due. So, what makes the Montero such an unkillable beast? Let's start with the powertrain, because Mitsubishi absolutely nailed it. The third-generation models, which ran from 2001 to 2006 in North America, came equipped with a 3.8-liter V6 that pumps out a healthy 215 horsepower. Now that might not sound crazy on paper, but this engine is built like a bank vault. The block is overbuilt, the internals are tough enough to handle serious abuse, and the power delivery is linear and predictable. Mitsubishi designed this motor to survive extreme heat, high altitude, and extended periods of hard running without grenading itself. The real magic happens when you look at the drivetrain. The Montero features a full-time four-wheel drive system with a 2-speed transfer case, and this isn't some wimpy electronic setup that gives up when things get real. We're talking about a legitimate mechanical system with low-range gearing that turns this SUV into a mountain goat. The Super Select 4WD system lets you switch between rear-wheel drive, full-time four-wheel drive, and locked four-wheel drive on the fly, giving you options that most modern SUVs can't even dream about. The suspension deserves a standing ovation because Mitsubishi didn't mess around here. Independent front suspension combined with a multi-link rear setup gives the Montero incredible articulation off-road while still maintaining decent on-road manners. The long travel suspension soaks up impacts that would rattle your teeth out in lesser vehicles, and the ground clearance is generous enough to tackle obstacles without scraping your undercarriage into oblivion. Here's where things get absolutely wild from a value perspective. You can find clean third-generation Monteros for anywhere between $5,000 to $12,000, and we're talking about vehicles with relatively low mileage because nobody drove these things into the ground. They were too expensive when new for most people to justify, so the ones that sold were typically well-maintained by enthusiasts who knew what they had. You're essentially buying Dakar rally-proven engineering for the price of a decent motorcycle. The interior space is legitimately impressive too. 3 rows of seating that actually accommodate real humans, not folding chairs designed by sadists. Cargo capacity that rivals much larger SUVs, and build quality that makes modern crossovers feel like they were assembled by hyperactive squirrels. Everything inside the Montero feels substantial, from the chunky door handles to the thick leather on higher trims. But we need to have an honest conversation about the challenges, because the Montero isn't perfect and ignoring these issues would be irresponsible. The biggest problem you'll face is parts availability. Mitsubishi pulled out of the full-size SUV market in North America after 2006, and finding OEM parts can sometimes feel like a scavenger hunt. Before you buy, research what common replacement parts cost and where you can source them. Aftermarket support exists, but it's not as robust as you'll find with Toyota or Honda. Rust is enemy number 1 for these SUVs, particularly if you're shopping in areas with harsh winters or coastal humidity. The frame is tough, but the body panels and rocker panels can corrode badly if the previous owner wasn't diligent about washing off road salt. Get underneath with a flashlight and inspect every inch of the frame, paying special attention to the rear crossmember and suspension mounting points. If you see flaky rust or holes forming, run away, unless you enjoy welding as a hobby. The timing belt is a non-negotiable inspection point. Mitsubishi recommends replacement every 60,000 miles, and if the seller can't prove it was done, assume it's overdue. A broken timing belt on this engine is an interference design, meaning your valves and pistons will have a very expensive meeting that nobody wants. Budget around $800 to $1,000 for a proper timing belt job with tensioners and water pump. Check the transfer case and differentials for leaks and proper fluid levels. These components work hard, especially if the previous owner actually used the 4-wheel drive system, and neglected fluid changes can lead to expensive failures. Look for fresh fluid, no metal shavings, and smooth operation when shifting between drive modes. Here's where it all comes down to. The Mitsubishi Montero is the SUV for people who actually understand what capability means. This isn't a mall crawler pretending to be tough. This is a genuine expedition-grade vehicle that's proven itself in the harshest environments on Earth. Find one that's been maintained properly, address any deferred maintenance, and you'll own an SUV that'll take you places most modern vehicles can't reach and bring you back home without drama. The Montero doesn't care about brand prestige or resale value. It just works, and sometimes that's exactly what you need.
And here we are, the moment you've been waiting for, the #1 spot on our list of cheap SUVs that absolutely refuse to die, the Suzuki Grand Vitara. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, wait, Suzuki? The motorcycle company? Yes, that's Suzuki. And before you click away thinking I've lost my mind, let me tell you why this little beast deserves the crown. The Grand Vitara is hands down the most underrated, overlooked, and undervalued SUV you can buy right now. And the people who know about these things are quietly scooping them up while everyone else is overpaying for Jeeps that'll break down before the warranty expires. Here's something that'll absolutely blow your mind. The Suzuki Grand Vitara was engineered using the same philosophy that made Suzuki's motorcycles legendary for reliability. We're talking about a company that built its entire reputation on creating machines that work flawlessly under extreme conditions with minimal maintenance. They took that same mentality and poured it into an SUV that weighs less than your average crossover, costs almost nothing to maintain, and will still be running when the heat death of the universe arrives. I'm not exaggerating when I say there are Grand Vitaras with 250,000 miles that haven't needed anything beyond oil changes and brake pads. That's not an SUV, that's basically a Timex watch with 4-wheel drive. The Grand Vitara is like that scrappy underdog in every sports movie who gets overlooked by everyone, shows up anyway, and then proceeds to absolutely dominate while the expensive prima donnas are sitting on the bench complaining about their hurt feelings. Except this underdog costs $3 grand and gets you to work every day for the next decade. Let's talk about what makes this little giant killer so incredibly tough. The heart of the Grand Vitara is either a 2.4-liter four-cylinder or, if you get really lucky, a 2.7-liter V6, and both of these engines are absolute workhorses. The four-cylinder produces around 166 horsepower, which sounds modest until you realize this SUV weighs about 3,500 pounds soaking wet. That power-to-weight ratio means it's actually quicker than you'd expect, and more importantly, the engine never has to strain itself, which is the secret to longevity. Less stress equals longer life, and Suzuki understood this from day one. The four-wheel drive system is where the Grand Vitara really earns its stripes. This isn't some fancy electronic nonsense that requires a computer science degree to operate. We're talking about a proper mechanical system with a 2-speed transfer case and a locking center differential on certain models. You pull a lever, engage four-wheel drive, and suddenly this compact SUV transforms into something that can crawl over obstacles that would stop vehicles twice its size. The ladder frame construction underneath is old-school tough, the kind of engineering that modern unibody crossovers abandoned in favor of looking pretty and saving weight. The suspension setup is brilliantly simple. Solid rear axle with coil springs gives you durability and articulation off-road, while the independent front suspension keeps things civilized on pavement. It's a perfect compromise that delivers capability without sacrificing everyday drivability. The steering is light, the visibility is excellent thanks to the boxy design, and maneuvering in tight spaces is effortless because this thing is genuinely compact compared to bloated modern SUVs. Now let's get to the part that'll make your wallet very happy. You can find second and third generation Grand Vitaras, we're talking late 90s through 2013 models, for anywhere between $3,000 and $8,000. $3,000. That's less than a decent used motorcycle, and you're getting a legitimate four-wheel drive SUV with proven reliability. The insurance is cheap because nobody's stealing these things, parts are inexpensive because Suzuki kept everything simple, and fuel economy is shockingly good for a real SUV, hovering around the mid-20s combined. The interior is basic but functional. You're not getting luxury here, you're getting honest transportation that doesn't pretend to be something it's not. Cloth seats that wear like iron, simple controls that never break, and enough room for 4 adults to sit comfortably. The cargo space is adequate for weekend adventures, and if you fold the rear seats, you can haul surprisingly large items without issue. But let's get serious about what you need to watch for, because even the toughest SUVs have their weaknesses. Rust is public enemy #1 for the Grand Vitara, especially if you're shopping in the Rust Belt or anywhere near saltwater. The body panels can develop rust bubbles around the wheel arches and door sills, but the real concern is the frame. Get underneath and inspect the ladder frame thoroughly, looking for surface rust versus structural corrosion. A little surface rust is fine and expected, but if you're seeing holes or significant flaking, that's a hard pass unless you're getting it for scrap value. The timing chain on the four-cylinder is generally reliable, but on higher mileage examples, listen carefully for rattling noises on cold starts. A noisy timing chain tensioner can lead to expensive problems if ignored. If you hear excessive rattling that doesn't go away after a few seconds of running, factor in the cost of repair or negotiate accordingly. Check the transfer case and front differential for leaks in proper operation. Engage the four-wheel drive during your test drive and make sure it shifts smoothly without grinding or hesitation. Listen for any whining noises from the differentials, which could indicate worn gears or bearing issues. These aren't catastrophically expensive to fix, but you want to know about them up front. Inspect the clutch carefully if you're looking at a manual model, which honestly you should be because the manual gearbox in these is bulletproof and way more fun. Test the clutch engagement point, make sure there's no slipping, and check for smooth shifts through all gears. A worn clutch isn't a deal breaker, but it's negotiating ammunition. So here's the ultimate truth about the Suzuki Grand Vitara.
This is the SUV that proves you don't need to spend a fortune to get genuine capability and legendary reliability. While everyone else is fighting over overpriced 4Runners and Wranglers, the Grand Vitara sits quietly in the background, waiting for someone smart enough to recognize its value. This is an SUV that'll take you camping in the mountains, commute to work without complaint, survive your questionable maintenance habits, and still be running long after trendier vehicles have turned into expensive paperweights. It's simple, it's tough, and it's honest. And those three qualities make it the absolute king of budget-friendly, indestructible SUVs.
And there you have it, folks. 5 SUVs that refuse to die. Built like absolute tanks and available for prices that won't destroy your bank account. From the reliable RAV4 to the adventurous Forester, the family-friendly Pilot, the Dakar-conquering Montero, and our champion Grand Vitara, these machines prove that smart shopping beats brand snobbery every single time. If you found this valuable, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button, because we've got tons more content coming your way about finding hidden gems in the used car market, avoiding expensive mistakes, and getting the most bang for your buck. Hit the like button if any of these SUVs surprised you, and drop a comment below telling me which one you'd buy and why. I read every single comment and love hearing your stories. And hey, if you're serious about buying one of these beasts, share this video with someone who needs to see it. Knowledge is power, and the more people who understand that reliable doesn't have to mean expensive, the better off we all are. Until next time, drive smart, buy smarter, and remember, the best SUV is the one that starts every morning and doesn't leave you stranded. I'll catch you in the next one.